Welcome to Hannity and Colmes, getting right to our top story tonight. More than 200,000 people showed up to see Barack Obama speak today in Berlin. The speech is being compared to other memorable ones by American politicians visiting in the German capital. Now, we thought we'd give you a chance to compare them yourselves. First, Senator Barack Obama earlier today in front of the Victory column.
I come to Berlin as so many of my countrymen have come before. Although tonight I speak to you not as a candidate for president, but as a citizen. A proud citizen of the United States and a fellow citizen of the world.
And there was also John F. Kennedy's famous speech on June 26, 1963.
All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the word, Ich bin ein Berliner.
And of course, Mr. Hannity's favorite, Ronald Reagan at the Brandenburg Gate, June 12, 1987.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
How do these three speeches compare? Joining us tonight, pollster and author of Words at Work, our own Frank Luntz. Frank, different contexts, different times, one a candidate, the other presidents, but how do you see it?
But that's what's remarkable. This is political theater at its best. Barack Obama clearly delivered one of the great speeches of his lifetime. The Europeans are watching very carefully, almost as much as Americans are, and you have to give him credit. Ronald Reagan was an experienced politico when he delivered his impressive speech back in 1987. John Kennedy had been president for over 2 years. Obama has done this with only being on the national and international stage for months or years. Now, we've got several segments that I want to point out. There are shades of Reagan, shades of Kennedy, and even shades of Bill Clinton in what he had to say. The first segment focuses specifically on Berlin. Let's listen to Obama at his best.
Look at Berlin, where the bullet holes in the buildings and the somber stones and pillars near the Brandenburg Gate insist that we never forget our common humanity. People of the world, look at Berlin, where a wall came down, a continent came together, and history proved that there is no challenge too great for a world that stands as one.
Inspirational, Alan, aspirational. And what's most important is he wasn't allowed to speak at the Brandenburg Gate. There's a big controversy about that. But he still managed to invoke it in his conversations. You have to give Obama credit for having the ability, the poise, and the presentation skills to be able to capture the hearts and the passion of almost 250,000 Berliners. And this is a guy, of course, who is just a candidate for president of the United States.
You have to admire the image making that goes into it, the fact that you have that image, which we will now see throughout the rest of this campaign, seared into the minds of the voting public as they see somebody standing on the world stage. That's a very smart move on the part of the campaign.
And the fact that he was able to do it in Afghanistan, he's able to do it in Iraq. And you still have people who are challenging him. When you look inside the words, what do they really mean? Quite frankly, we don't know the answer to that, but we do know that the words are powerful. Now, he had a comment. He spoke about America, and this is something that's very dangerous for a presidential candidate to do, where he addresses America in less than a perfect light. But notice how at the end he does something that his wife didn't do. Barack Obama talks not just what's wrong with America, but how much he loves it. Let's listen.
I know my country has not perfected itself. At times, we've struggled to keep the promise of liberty and equality for all of our people. We've made our share of mistakes. And there are times when our actions around the world have not lived up to our best intentions. But I also know how much I love America. I know that for more than 2 centuries, we have strived at great cost and great sacrifice to form a more perfect union, to seek with other nations a more hopeful world.
Hey, Frank, it's Sean. Good to see you. You know, we are electing the President of the United States. We're not electing the President of Germany or Europe in general here. And I understand your point about words, but they are just words. This is just a speech here. Let's make one other comparison that nobody's brought up at this point. You know, when Ronald Reagan went to Europe, there usually were large crowds protesting him. When he was pursuing SDI, when he was deploying Pershing II missiles, there was a lot of antipathy. They thought he was a California cowboy that would start World War III. President Bush, similarly, has not been loved by some of our European friends. Is it maybe that he's liked so much because he supports European socialist ideas and that they agree with him on Iraq? They don't agree the surge has been successful.
I think that they like him so much because he represents such a significant change. Part of the responsibility of a president is stagecraft. And part of stagecraft is to be able to capture the public's imagination and get them to dream dreams and get them to want to work together.
But nobody did. Wait a minute, hang on a second. But nobody did that in this country better than Reagan. Nobody inspired a shining city on the hill, you know, the last great hope for man on this earth. That was Reagan. And, you know, Americans responded, but Europeans despised him.
And, Sean, our goal should not be to be loved by the Europeans, and it shouldn't even to be respected by the Europeans, because in the end, there are times when you're right. America does have to do certain things on its own. But you cannot ignore the fact that the world community over the past week has been absolutely wowed by this individual at a time when American popularity is at its low point.
Could it be that Barack Obama shares Europe's contempt and criticisms of America? Could it be that they agreed with him on the war? Could it be that they bow at the altar at the United Nations? Could it be that they don't agree with Gitmo or tough interrogations? Could it be that they they would talk to Ahmadinejad without preconditions? Could it all have to do with that? His ideology is one of a European socialist.
It does have something to do with his ideology, but in this election campaign, and it is very frustrating for conservatives, we are not choosing the candidate necessarily who we agree with on policy. We're choosing the candidate because of his attributes and his character traits. And what Obama has been able to do is transcend politics. It's why individuals like you, Sean, are so important to the political process, because you hold them accountable. But you also have to acknowledge that the American people are angry, they're frustrated, they're anxious about the future, and John McCain has not been able to coalesce a message that is consistent, that is coherent, and that grabs the emotion of the public. Obama has been able to cut through at a time when Americans do not trust the politicians.
If there's anything that's frustrating to me, Frank, these are just words. He seems to agree with the European anti-American sentiment and the belief in the United Nations. But I look at it this way. America is 4% of the world's population, but we pay 96% of the cost of keeping the entire planet sane and free. And you know what? That's what I would have said if I went to Europe.
But, Sean, in the end, the American people do vote on words. And as an analyst of words, I can tell you that these were effective, not just for Europeans, but for undecided voters in America.
All right, Frank, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us. And coming up, rumors continue to